Hey, everybody. I just want you to know one thing about Citizen Kane. I'm not interested in gold mines, oil wells, all that stuff. I'm just interested in the real thing. Citizen Kane. What's going on there? What's his moxie? What's his angle? What do you guys say?
I don't
Who
know
is this
any of the
Kane
words
guy?
that you just said. Yeah. You're going to have to reword that one for me because I'm already confused.
Well, that's kind of the theme of the show, isn't it?
It's true.
That's
Confusing me
already
and you
confused.
explaining. Yeah. I'm already confused.
Great.
You guys might have to take the wheel on this one.
And perfect pre-show chatter. Thanks, you guys. Perfect pre-show chatter. All right, and for you, everybody on YouTube, this is the bonus content because we'll be cutting over this until we start with, hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us on another fantastic episode of Josh and Cassie Yell About Movies. I'm Josh, a veteran independent writer about podcasting and freelance journalist who talks to fine folks like we have on the episode today, and my co-host, Cassie. Come on down.
Here I am. Hi. Yeah. My name is Cassie. I'm a TV newser, promotions producer, yoga instructor, and movie fanatic. And I'm happy to be here today.
Wonderful. I'm happy to be here too, guys. We have a fantastic guest today talking with us about a classic film, Citizen Kane. He's a veteran of stage, screen, and podcasting, better known most famously as Dr. Venture from Venture Brothers on Adult Swim, and possibly soon in the film version of that. We'll find out. Guys, it's James Urbaniak.
Hi. Hey.
Yay.
Hello. Thanks for coming.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yes,
Exciting to be here.
It's exciting for us too. This is the first time for us talking about a classic film. Although,
Interesting.
keep in mind, audience, this is an exception because we talked about Mank before, and James wanted to know, can we talk about Citizen Kane, because that's what the grounding of Mank is about. And I said, why not? So I went back and watched it. I fell asleep the few times I tried to watch it before. So if you haven't seen it yet, what's that?
When did you fell asleep the first time you tried to watch it years ago? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And
Josh, you fall asleep a lot during movies. That's kind of just a you thing.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Also happened in 2001: A Space Odyssey as well. Go ahead, James.
What was it? Because I don't think of it as a lulling film. What was it that knocked you out in the sense of going to sleep? Do you recall?
I thought about this a lot, and I feel like it's the opening, which after watching the whole film now and having a great appreciation for film, I feel like the opening's a little stodgy with its newsreel opening. Perhaps that put me to sleep. There was no story there. It took me out.
This is fascinating because the newsreel tells the whole story of the movie, basically, the character. It sets it up, and then the movie does this quasi-experimental thing where it plays with time, a la Pulp Fiction, if you will. It kind of, and different perspectives on the characters. But the newsreel itself is interesting because, by the way, I'm into the film. It lands for me. Let me back up for a second. So you watched it again recently, right?
Yep.
Within the last couple of days or whatever. And what was your response that time?
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I still think the newsreel section, while effective for you, is a bit too long. It's close to 10 minutes. I don't think it needs 10 minutes to tell a story, which, as they exemplified at the end of the movie, when they sort of summed it up with that, his whole life's a jigsaw puzzle. That thing that they did in the 40s where they sort of summarized the whole film is, I didn't think they needed 10 minutes to tell that opening story, but I love the character building, the world building. I still felt that a lot of the film, the characters sort of kept us at arm's length, but he sort of kept everybody at arm's length, didn't he?
That's what he is. Cassie, what do you think? I'm sorry, I don't mean to run the show here, but I'm curious about your guys' perception.
I mean, please, I love it when guests jump in and sort of do their own thing.
I'm not going to be like the one person in the world who's like, oh yeah, I don't like Citizen Kane.
You can be, though.
Obviously, even if I did.
By the way,
I don't want to.
I'm not coming from a place of arguing for it because there's no argument to be made. It either lands or it doesn't. It's like you like sushi or you don't or something.
Oh, could you guys hold on one sec? There's a beeping I need to stop.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Phoebe's place looks nice. Sheesh.
I see more
Uh,
friends and acquaintances' homes in the last year than I ever have.
I know. Yeah, I've seen a lot of living rooms and
Yes.
bedrooms. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we're back, and it's like sushi.
Oh, I was just saying, I'm not. I love the movie, but I'm not coming from a place of arguing, or if you're not into it or don't like aspects of it. I'm just interested in how it lands for people, and no one's right or wrong. It's just how it lands for you. So, and I have my own
Right.
crackpot theories about it and stuff. So I'm happy to get into that.
I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to that.
So yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, Citizen Kane theories.
But we were
Okay,
talking
no,
about Cassie's
you know what?
impression of the movie. So go on.
Yes.
Yeah, I am really, I'm in awe of it. I respect it when I'm watching it. Oftentimes when I'm watching classic cinema, it almost feels like I'm watching like a foreign film. I find it hard to interpret and figure out what's happening. And you're right, there was a lot of time jumping.
Why
and-
are old
What's that?
movies hard for you to figure out? Like, what is it?
The way they talk and the way they're structured. There's a chance that films have just been dumbed down since then. I don't know. You know what I mean? For some reason, I just find newer films easier
Well,
to follow.
this is interesting because I don't think films have dumbed down. I think styles and storytelling change. So,
Okay, yeah.
So, like,
It really is. It's a language. It's like a different
and
language. I don't know
there
how else
are
to
references and just conventions that whether you're using those conventions or going against them, which Citizen Kane does both, an audience 80 years ago is going to have a different take on what you're doing with those conventions than an audience today. So, for example, the opening sequence that Josh thinks is kind of boring. Do people call you
little too long?
I love that sequence, but again, I'm not arguing that you're wrong. I'm just saying this is my take on it. So it's, first of all, the thrust of that sequence is satirical. It's heightened the way a Coen Brothers film might be. It's actually supposed to be kind of funny. The announcer is doing a kind of parody of that kind of announcing, and even the writing of that sequence is meant to be kind of funny, the way they phrase the words and stuff. And that style, it's very much a parody of sort of the way Time magazine and other newsreels wrote that kind of material back then. And then it has all these funny sort of technical things where it's showing obviously fake footage of Kane throughout his life, and sometimes the footage has been scratched so it looks old. It also has meta jokes in it. The first time Kane is being interviewed in the newsreel, an interviewer asks him a question about something, and Kane says, "Don't believe everything you hear on the radio," which is a direct reference to Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast, which is the thing that made him famous.
I didn't.
That's the thing that made him famous.
Oh,
so that's like a meta joke about, here I am, the guy who freaked everybody out in War of the Worlds. So all I'm saying is there are all these different.
They did that same thing. They did that same thing throughout the film. Like when Leland, in his post death of Kane sequence, says, "Well, I never really believed everything in those papers anyway."
So there's there's stuff in that sequence that that lands for an audience in a certain way who at the time knew the War of the Worlds, knew what those newsreels sounded like, understood when they're being kind of sent up. And then, quite understandably, 80 years later, many viewers might start the movie and they're like, okay, it's in black and white. This announcer's talking in a weird old-timey voice. There's scratches on the film. This is like an old movie. People already get their defenses up. I'm not saying this was your reaction, but I'm just saying this is, so it actually has the opposite reaction where some people kind of stand back and go, I don't know, this is closed for me. I can't find my way into this. And so it's just a different way of processing stuff, But the whole movie is like that. It's actually being super inventive, and it's completely reflecting its very, very young director's incredible excitement. Orson Welles is beside himself through this movie, and he's a super talented guy. So there's, for me, what lands is an almost visceral, very palpable sense of this young director's excitement at creating something and doing stuff in a new way with a lot of energy and invention and humor. And that's what lands for me in the movie. And I think that, and so it's personal in that way. And so I think that that personal connection that he has with the movie, it's all his vision and it's all his energy. That still lands for people over the years, and that's why it continues to be acclaimed. But on the other hand, I also understand how some people today might watch it and they just don't see a way into this, you know.
I'd like to ask you a
Please.
follow-up question about that. Obviously, the film is a reflection of his intensity and burning desire to be as great as Citizen Kane was. Well, the character. But since we're coming into this from watching Mank recently, and Mank, if you guys haven't seen the film,
I
go
made
back
it
and
halfway
listen.
through Mank. I made it halfway. I was you the first time you watched Kane. I was like, I'm out. I'll be, and that subject matter is right up my alley, but I was like, and I haven't gone back to watch the second half yet. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but go on.
Okay. Well, I hadn't seen Citizen Kane before Mank, and obviously that might help. But the main takeaway for me initially from Mank and relating to this is that Mank, the screenwriter of Citizen Kane, wrote a huge amount more script than Orson Welles used. So much, I think Orson Welles cut out, from my recollection, probably 2/3 of what Mank wrote, and only gave him co-screenwriting credit at the Oscars. So, how much of that came out, or did you know that history of the screenplay?
Yeah, I know that
Citizen
Herman
Kane?
Mankiewicz officially wrote the screenplay, and then Wells basically went to town on it as an editor and as a director.
Yeah.
But and that Wells was very protective of his image. He wasn't nuts about sharing credit, but he does share a title card with Mankiewicz in the movie and gives Mankiewicz top billing. He also shares a title card with the director of photography, Greg Toland. It says, directed by Orson Welles and shot by Greg Toland, which is unusual and generous.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I know that this is. Yeah, I know about like the history of the screenplay and stuff.
Oh, well, I guess I was just asking you. Right, I was just asking you like how you guys could have imagined. Obviously, you haven't read his massive script for that. What do you think? What do you think might have been cut out of the film, and what do you think of the now that you've seen Citizen Kane or Mank or vice versa? What do you think? A 3 times longer Kane could have been. Or what are your impressions?
I mean, this is interesting because it's like, what do you choose to show in a story that's actually about a guy's entire adult life? In fact, his entire life. It even starts with him as a little kid.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I think everything in the movie is kind of perfect. What they choose to focus on is really perfect. And I don't think you need to see much more of him as a boy, growing up in the boarding house. When the boy first comes to the big city, they kind of get that over with quickly. When he was in college, with Jed, you don't need to see them getting drunk in college or getting thrown out of Harvard. But I mean, you could, I guess, but that's a different movie.
Yeah.
Oh well, I was just thinking. Part of the film seems like it intentionally obfuscates, and like at the beginning, it explains so much, but somewhere in that opening and in his childhood, I was lost at how he was going to be. He was automatically so rich. Like, I understand he inherited a large sum of money from somewhere. I still can't remember it.
Yeah,
It was
it doesn't
something to do
matter.
with like a trust he got. But I know it's just.
No, but I mean, it's just, there's this
Anyway.
some boarder in the boarding house left them some document, and it ended up being like for a mine, and it ended up making a lot of money. And it's just like, boom, he's rich. It kind of doesn't matter how he got there.
Yeah. Right. I gotcha. It's a story element. Okay. Well, let's start it right at the top. Cassie, James, the movie's called Citizen Kane, yet it doesn't use the phrase Citizen Kane, I don't think. If so, what do you think of the title?
Excuse me.
It's okay. What do you think of the title and how it reflects the way? What do you think of the title and how it reflects the way he referred to himself when running for governor as "I'm an American"?
Yeah,
I'm an American.
The title, I believe, was actually a studio guy at RKO came up with the title, and I think it's a great title because it's just like the title is like some guy named Kane, because he tries to be he tries to run for governor. He has ideas about being the president, but he never is. He's always a civilian, a citizen. So I think it's a great kind of slightly ironic title, you know. And of course, he's a very significant person with a great deal of power. But he's just some American citizen of a very wealthy, privileged, and dangerous class.
Who's not interested in gold mines, oil wells, shipping, or real estate? Cassie, what say you about Citizen Kane?
About what in general?
Oh, well, the theme of the beginning, like James said, he's just a citizen. Just a citizen, just a guy with a lot of money.
So the whole film, I guess it's about how do you define a life, right? Like, so, and that's what it is. It's how do you
1,600 something minutes, I think.
Yeah, 525,600 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it in a broad sense, and I guess this isn't really your question, but one of the reasons why it still lands today, like James was saying, is because from birth through adulthood through death, like that's something we all go through, and who we are is completely dependent on the person. Like we're all a different person to everyone in our lives, right? And we're all a different person to ourselves, and we take our true self, our true individuality with us to the grave, just like he took Rosebud to the grave. No one will ever know that except him, and that's universal. You know what I mean? That's something that will never change. We all go through that. We're all.
The thing that's interesting to me is that.
There you go.
Go on.
I want to first. Sorry to interrupt, James. I just want to applaud Cassie for that. That might have been her best answer on the show so far. Thank you.
Oh,
on this episode or in the
Josh?
history of the podcast?
Nice of you.
That's great. I think in the whole show.
Oh, thanks.
The thing that's interesting to me is that it's like a psychological portrait of a kind of a fucked up guy, and he's got major abandonment issues. He was ripped from his family. He misses his mom, and then he basically wants love, but he's broken. It's also uncanny and eerie how sort of Trumpian the character is, which often came up from the incredible neediness for public love, yet the broken ability to actually return genuine love or emotion, right down to the fact that when he loses an election, he says it was a fraud. It's kind of nuts how much it kind of foreshadows Trump. But it's sort of a portrait of a kind of a psychology, and I dare say a kind of toxic masculinity, where this guy, through his need to have people love him, all of his sort of career choices are made because that's what he wants. So he runs a newspaper and decides to start out as a kind of populist because he wants the people to love him. But he also resents the banker who ripped him from his family. So he wants to fuck with that guy. He literally says to him, the banker says when he's old, what do you want or what do you want to be? And he turns to him and says, everything you hate, which is like really crazy. Then he has this mistress. He gets divorced, and then she aspires to be a singer, but she's not really that good. And he basically forces her and uses all his power to make her super famous, but she hates it. She doesn't like it. The audience hates her, and because he wants her to love. And then his friend writes an honest review of how she's not good. And so he has to fire the friend, but he also wants the friend to love him. So he ends up finishing the bad review. So it's just a series of these very deep sort of psychological gestures that drive his career. And I just find that a really fascinating character.
It is fascinating, but my thought, it sounds like you're might disagree with this, was my thought originally is that another one of the themes besides nostalgia and a longing for childhood a la Rosebud was that money drives a person's life to
100%.
these uncanny depths, and it can't buy you happiness. Just like she says at the end, she says, you know, you never gave me anything I wanted, which means he never gave her his heart.
That's definitely
he didn't have
there.
one to give her.
Yeah. There's also, you know, you've got progressive Mankiewicz and Wells coming out of the Great Depression. There's definitely a kind of left-wing skepticism and even anger at these sort of Robert Barron type untrammeled capitalists. 100%. That's there. A kind of skepticism about the whole idea of sort of American capitalistic success and the cost of that, and the sort of cost of that in soul, if you will. So yeah, there's a lot of shit going on in the movie.
Yeah. So Cassie, let me ask you: was this a horror film?
By the way, I love that score. It's a great score.
Music in it, and then
I did, yeah.
And then at the end, and then at the end, it ends with no trespassing, and you get this smoke going off in the distance that someone watching it with me suggested might represent a foreshadowing of the Holocaust, which I looked it up and was happening at the time they were finishing producing this film, although
well, there's a reference to the war in Europe in it, of course, a kind of humorous. The movie's made in 41, before Pearl Harbor, so it's after the war in Europe, but before the United States was involved. And there is a joke in the newsreel where the newsreel indicates that this interview is from 1935, and he says there won't be a war in Europe, which he's wrong about. So, but there's definitely, like, you know, audiences at the time were aware of that might happen. You know, that's actually part of the reason War of the Worlds freaked everybody out. That was in 39. And Americans were kind of worried that we might get into the war. So then when they turned on the radio and they said Martians were landing in New Jersey, a lot of people bought it because they were just already kind of coiled and primed for that news, which did indeed happen a couple years later that we're in this war.
All right. Well, Cassie, what do you think of the film as a character study?
Well, I was going to say, to what you were saying before, it could be seen as a horror film if you think of it in the sense of, like, is there anything more horrific than a life not well lived, right? Or you know, so in a sense, it could be.
No, go on. This is interesting.
Go ahead, James. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think I kind of said everything basically as far as character study go, but it's the kind of the timeless theme of who are we, what is life actually all about, and what's really important when it's all over, you know? I mean, that's basically what I see this film as. And I know there's a lot more to it than that, but
yeah, because there's all these different themes and stuff that's in there.
What it is
so
to me.
That, you know,
yeah,
you don't have to, you know, everyone's gonna focus on something else. And also, besides just the themes, for me, just technically, it's highly enjoyable. Just if you even go beyond the story and these themes we're talking about, there's just the technical aspect of it that's really exciting and kinetic and creative and funny. And there is a horror movie element, like Bernard Herrmann's score. It's his first movie score, by the way, and he's one of the all-time great film. His last movie score was Taxi Driver, so he had quite a run.
Is it an homage to Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney?
There's definitely. I think he's just drawing
Frankenstein
from
kind of music,
the same well that composers for those movies are drawing from, and that I guarantee you Orson Welles loved Frankenstein, and he just loves good old fashioned. Let's have an effect on the audience. Let's just shake up the audience, and you know, in a way, he's a real populist. He's just like a showman. He's like, let's fucking shake up the audience. And so, yeah, it begins with like this house on the hill with a light out of it. And, you know, it's like the music's going da, da, da. That's totally horror-like and fun. The movie is fun. That's part of it. It's just.
Yeah, there's some genre shifting. Yeah.
Say that again, Cassie?
I just said there's some genre
there's just a sense of fun.
Throughout, I feel like.
Even does crazy things like near the end, he has that shot of the cockatoo screeching right before. Yeah, and it's just like, because like, you know, as we know, there are a lot of birds and animals at Xanadu, but he's also just sticking that in there to wake everybody up and just to kind of fuck with the audience.
That woke me up. Totally. That worked for me.
There was another shot that I enjoyed, and I feel like I've seen it like in more recent films, but not older ones, where it was the shot of like a
that's a super
photo,
when he hires the staff of the rival newspaper,
and it, do you know what I'm talking
seamlessly, about? It's a super cool shot. That's the other thing. There's like
I thought that was
almost
fun.
Every scene has some sort of optical effect or special effect, because it was actually a relatively low budget movie. But through matte paintings and optical effects and illusions, they create this sense of this giant estate and these giant statues. And there's all kinds of super cool effects in it as well. So that's just, you know, people don't think of it as like a special effects movie, but it kind of is. And that's, again, just Welles being kind of a showman and just loving playing with this stuff and having an effect. What can I do here? And you get a sense of that excitement. And it's also, he's 25 years old when he made it. So, which is, you know, he'd been acting professionally for almost 10 years at that point. He actually started as a teenager. He didn't go to college. So he, in a sense, he was totally ready to do this movie when it happened. He'd been directing on Broadway. He'd been directing these very successful radio shows. He'd been acting professionally since he was 16. So he's just ready. So it's just like a young guy who has complete control and is ready to do something super creative. It's kind of like Sgt. Pepper, frankly, which is a really creative thing by a bunch of 20-somethings who have been doing this since they were teenagers as well and are ready to move to the next level. And I tell you this, I bet there's people today who listen to Sgt. Pepper and go, yeah, I don't know what this is. There's fucking tubas in this song. Like, I don't know. I can't find my way into this. This doesn't land for me. And you know what? That's fine. This guy's singing about a girl leaving and there's violins. Like, I'm not, I just don't know where this isn't music to me.
Oh. Well, it's part of like you and Cassie were saying. Like she said, I think
films have dumbed down. I think they're always bad
movies.
And
you said no, styles have changed,
and there's just different styles. But there are like conventions. Like Orson Welles is a limited actor. He's great and actually quite commanding, but he's not an actor of great depth mostly. But that actually works for that character because the character is not a man of great depth, and you know. And the character has a distance quality anyway. But Welles is also an actor in 1941, so even though he's very American, he has a bit of a mid-Atlantic thing in his voice. So there are just certain conventions to the way he acts that are dated. So I'm not saying there aren't dated aspects of the movie, but the dated aspects are just a delivery system for feelings and emotions. and our delivery systems for those change over the years. But if you can get past the sort of conventions, the emotion and the excitement and the feeling is still there. So that's, but this is a whole other topic. I'm also fascinated by like conventions and acting styles and stuff. But frankly, he loves actors, and the performances in the movie are amazing. And I think like Dorothy Comingore, who plays Susan, gives this really raw performance. Like, I don't think there's anything dated about that performance at all. The women are great. Also, Ruth Warwick, who plays his first wife, is very elegant, privileged lady. She's great and really funny as she sort of gets older. And, that very funny sequence where they sort of show their relationship at the breakfast table over the course of several years. And she very subtly shows us the changes in that character. The first scene, they're super into each other. And by the end, she's reading the rival newspaper and giving him this really devastating expression. So, yeah.
And Agnes Moorehead is too. Who I didn't even recognize her.
That's
I know her as
scene.
Samantha's mom on Bewitched.
I think that's one of the greatest one scene characters and performances ever, because you really get a sense of the fact that she feels this is the right thing. And she has this combination of, it's sort of like this, she's protecting herself. She has this very steeliness where she's saying to the father, no, we're going to do this. But you can also see the heartbreak underneath, that she knows she has to get rid of her son. But she doesn't cry on screen. But you can see that dynamic, and that's very hard to do, and it's really extraordinary. Like, he loved actors, and I love acting. I'm an actor. When I first got into these old movies, that's what I led with, was like the acting. That's what I would always focus on, and it's very satisfying just in terms of performances. That's just another aspect that I love. And I do love Welles, and I think he's perfect for the movie, and it would make no sense for him to have cast someone else, because it's a weird movie. It really is. It's such a personal expression of something he's making. So of course he has to play that character,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had to take some notes while you were talking because I didn't want to interrupt. But I wanted to go back. I'm going to ask you guys two questions. The first one, and I'll answer them first, just give you my answers. Was there a moment that took you out of the film? And conversely, was there a moment that really drew you in? For me, it was those sort of flash forward sequences with old man Leland, his one-time close friend, being seen taken away by nurses, arm in arm, as if he needed help walking. However, he got up on his own power and didn't seem like he needed any help walking. So that kind of took, there you go. See, James knows what I'm talking about. That sort of took me out of it just a little bit. I was like, this guy doesn't need any help walking. I mean, granted, the limitations of old age makeup in 1941 at the time, but still, they could have done something else with that. Now, the moment that took me in, as you mentioned, was you were talking about his limited range as an actor. However, the moment that brought me in the most was the best thing he did acting in the film, I thought. He was talking to his future wife, the singer who he would build Kubla Khan for and opera houses all over the country. And he was telling her, he was leading up to talking about Rosebud. He said he was going to go to a warehouse. I forget if it was where it was, but he was going to go back and look at the things from his childhood. He said kind of a nostalgia thing. And then she didn't react, or maybe she was taking it in or didn't react the way he wanted her to. And he just snaps in that instant. And he looks up at her and he says, so what do you do? I read a bunch of newspapers. What do you do? He was furious at her for not reacting the way that he wanted her to. It was like his one of the few moments in the film where he allowed another character to come into his world, and she didn't for that 2 seconds, and that was it.
That's
that's
fascinating. I don't see that moment that way, but I'm not questioning
really
that's how that landed for you. But I will say that is one of my favorite scenes of his as an actor. And my favorite moment in that scene is when he's talking about, he went to collect his mother's stuff or whatever. and she says something like mothers are important. She says something about mothers, and he looks at her with this incredible love in his eyes, and you realize, oh shit, she's the new mother. There's this very deep kind of, is this thing cliche we talk about, you sort of in partners, we sort of see our parents in a way, it's just a weird kind of thing, but like he's falling in love with her, but he also needs this sort of maternal thing in his life, which that's 100% part of men-women relationships, is there's a maternal thing that the women offer the men, and that I've heard many women say they fall in love with the boy that they see in the man and stuff like that. So, and you can really see that in his face where he's like, I'm falling in love with this person because of the maternal glow that I'm getting from her. And I miss my mom. And that's why I want to be with this woman. And I think he's great in that moment.
The end of the father. That's a great callback to our father episode, James.
I don't see his mother in
that was the
scene.
ending of the
I
father.
Just see him
he says,
like,
I want my mommy.
Trying to be self-deprecating and charming and being like, I'm. But I love his acting in that moment. And I don't mean to say he's perhaps I'm wrong when I say he's a limited actor. I'm saying he can be very deep, but his default is kind of surfacey, and it's a very commanding surface. It's very commanding and very compelling, but it's more rare where you regularly sort of see what's happening underneath, but you do see it there in that moment. So I'm 100% behind you. I will say the moment that takes me out is another acting moment where it's only for a second, but it's in the scene early on at the Inquirer where he writes the Declaration of Principles, and then Jed says, I'm going to keep that. I want to keep that handwritten thing. I think it might be very important someday. And then the scene ends with a close-up. By the way, close-ups are relatively rare and in the movie. A lot of scenes play out in like 2 shots and masters, which is really interesting and also unusual for the time. But there's a close-up of Welles, and his eye line is he's supposed to be looking at Joseph Cotten, and he's smiling, and it's a slightly awkward smile. But whenever I see that shot, I'm like, that's just Orson Welles looking at a mark. He's not looking at Joseph Cotten. It looks fake to me. So that's the one moment where it kind of looks fake. But I would say I'm drawn in also to like moments like you just described. Another great acting moment that really draws me in is when, and the whole sequence is fantastic, when they're at the opening of, not the opening, they're at his rally for when he's running for governor, and he's given this big thundery speech, and then his wife sends the boy home with someone else, and she gets into the carriage, and she's like, and he's like, what's going on? And he sticks his head in, and he goes, what's going on? Why'd you send Junior home? And it's very real. And you can see he's kind of freaking out. He wants, and she's great too. And she just looks at him and she says, it might be nothing, but I'm going to this address. And it's Susan's address where has his mistress. And that moment between them is so powerful, and it's very real. And every time I see that moment, it's a small moment, but it's so, and there's lots of moments like that where there's like genuine emotion happening on screen. So yeah, I'm just picking out a random one as something that I'm like, God, I love this moment where he sticks his head in the car. It's so great.
Yeah. Cassie?
Yes.
So there's a scene where there's a bunch of like dancing girls and they have those little outfits on. I really like that scene. I like it too. And I'm always fascinated with people who have like small roles in one movie, because I just want to like jump in and talk to them and be like, who are you? What's your story? You know what I mean? And there's one of those things where, I see all of these women who like,
there's one girl who sort of featured who he grabs and kisses, and she kind of gives him a "what are you doing" face, and then she smiles and moves away, and it's a great moment, and it's very real too. It really seems like that's happening. Totally. Totally. Oh my God, 100%. But
That
and that's
that
such an
felt Trumpian
insane
also,
scene
like what
because
he
it's
used to do
like he's feeling
backstage with
really
his
good about
beauty
himself in
pageants.
the newspaper, but he's also engineering this event that he's in the center of because it's all about him again. It's ostensibly the success of the paper, but and then the great relationship where there's these great shots of Jed and Bernstein sort of sitting in the corner and and they're sort of singing along, but there's something really weird about the way their faces look. They're like really close to the frame, and it just gives this kind of uncomfortable quality to what's going on, which is so great, sort of suggesting the cracks in that the fissures in this in this character and this situation. It's so masterfully done, but it's also just so much fun. Orson Welles says, and then there's going to be a fucking musical number in this thing.
I know. Yeah. There was, and like you were talking about the wide shots and the close-up shots. There was toward the end where she's
Exactly.
in this huge mansion, and there's a fireplace that could probably fit like 10 people inside it. The huge fireplace, that. And the shots were so wide, you
Yeah.
really got the feeling of
their
like
voices are
she's
echoing,
alone.
and of
Like
course,
she's not
'cause
alone,
the sound
but
is great, and
she's
he was a
alone.
radio
And their
director
voices
for
were like
years, so
echoey even.
like that's right up his alley. Yeah. It's just full of all these great details that really work. And the thing is, he also had great collaborators. And again, it's very personal because he's not just using like studio actors. He's using people. A lot of the actors, it's their first movie. It's like I think it's Joseph Cotton's first movie. It's Ruth Warwick's first movie, who plays his first wife. And he's using a lot of people who he worked with in the theater and in his radio show. Everett Sloan, Ray Collins, who plays the rival politician, whatever his name is, Geddes. They're all awesome. They're really excellent. And part of the reason they're great is because they've worked with him before and he knows them and they have kind of a shorthand, So, and then like he's got one of the all-time great DPs who's super into the fact that Wells has never made a movie before. Greg Tolan was very seasoned, but was super into working with this young guy who kind of didn't know what he was doing on a film set, but felt like there was something great about that. He's got a wonderful composer. Herman Mankiewicz has written a great script that, yes, Orson Welles is then fashioning to his own purposes quite appropriately. But, it's just all the elements and all the collaborators are really excellent. So the thing just works. Movies are weird. It's like amazing there are any good movies because they're so hard to make. It really is true. They're so bizarre. But like he is just ready. He's like, I'm fucking ready to make a great movie. And he's got collaborators. He has a studio that's behind him. And it was really the only time it worked that well for him. And really all, I mean, he made other great movies. But but they were made under duress.
I was about to say,
it was the first time, like, he was just like, hey, I want you and you and you. And the studio's like, yes. But once they finished it, had problems. Because first of all, Hearst was still that figure is inspired by Hearst. It's not about Hearst per se, but he really tried to stop it. He wanted to destroy it, actually, and could have succeeded, which would have been
right.
It's like that would have been like the burning of the library at Alexandria. It would have been one of these unthinkable things. Like
it ruffled some feathers. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we should have. Sorry, we should have mentioned that Mank connection there. From the movie Mank, how was they show a lot of the really Hearst character in Mank and why he hated him so much.
One of the right after the newsreel in the projection room scene where the reporters are talking, the main reporter is like, "But what's he like? Like he's not." And then he mentions like Ford or Hearst. They actually mention Hearst in the beginning of the movie to go. So, by the way, this is not Hearst, just so you know. It's like a disclaimer. It's hilarious. Yeah, covering their butts. The total butt cover. There's a throwaway reference to Hearst. Right. So, this guy who's very similar to Hearst, but he's not Hearst, just so you know.
Totally.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, guys, this has been fantastic. We could break down a lot of individual scenes, or we could talk about our
No, I
final
mean,
thoughts. Unless you
this is
have
obviously a
any
movie that
more
we could do
things
like
you
a
want to
whole
get
podcast
into.
series about.
Anybody?
But
I don't know.
oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm surprised there was never a
that would be
colorized
a
version
nightmare.
of it.
A
I read that
nightmare.
they almost released a colorized version once, but never, because yeah, it would.
But yeah, no, I
Yeah.
see what you mean about how they could do a whole podcast series on it because of how it introduced a whole new storytelling language, and so many things in there on screen are like popular gifs now, like his applauding in the movie theater
Yes.
for his wife's opera performance. He doesn't applaud at first. I thought at first it was because he was embarrassed, but then after I saw that he was waiting for the audience to applaud, it was because he wanted to make sure he was honoring her properly. He didn't want to applaud and be seen as favorable to his wife.
That's another great. That's another great acting moment. But he is.
People,
you can see that he's aware that
right?
she is
Isn't
not
that right?
a great singer. But he's
yeah.
Yeah, it's angry clapping, and he's really good at he's good at those like intense.
Yes, he was very, very, very.
The scene where he
clapping.
like wrecks the room is like another great moment too.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's what I wanted to ask you guys about. In that scene, it's not immediately clear. Do you think he was searching for the snow globe that represented Rosebud in that scene, and the globe reminded him of it? Also, do you think he kept the globe because it reminded him of Rosebud, or did he just happen to find the snow globe?
I think he just comes across it. I don't think he's looking for it when he destroys it. He's just angry at what's happened. She's left him, and she's great in that scene. She's basically like, "Try me," She's like, and then really that's incredibly relevant, man. Any relationship, two partners, not just men, women, anyone in a relationship where he's like, she's like, "Oh, this is all about you, huh? Listen to what you just said." She really gives it to him. And it's very contemporary. He's like, I need this or whatever. And she's like, wow, it's still about you. And she's like, and I don't remember the dialogue, but she's basically like, look what I can do. Watch what I'm going to do. And then she just walks out. Like, she's really brutal. And she's really self-possessed in that moment.
Right.
And then he's just like, there's nothing he can do. So he just fucking destroys things like angry men do sometimes. And then I think he just comes across the globe, and then the globe is like, well, this means something to me. And it's partially it's hers.
Yeah.
But it's also, it reminds him of before he was ripped away, before he was untimely ripped from his family. Yeah. But the Rosebud thing is funny too, because it's a bit of what Hitchcock called a MacGuffin. It's just kind of a device that motors
the person
the story.
that he used to be.
But in a sense, it kind of doesn't matter because, as I said to you before we recorded, it's kind of the journey. And so, like, it's not like it's the big revelation. Oh, wow, it was a sled. It's like, yeah, it was. But they even, like, Thompson even says in the end of the movie, yeah, but it is, but it isn't. Like, we don't really know.
Oh.
They're basically saying, we're about to wrap this up, but in a sense, we can't wrap it up in a neat little ribbon. So then film acknowledges that.
Right. And of course, right. And I got to admit that a guy that rich, his servants would have cataloged everything in that house, and they would have found the sled with Rosebud on it.
I'd buy it.
And I mean, they would have. Anyway, so that's it. And actually, now thinking about that, right? Wouldn't they? And obviously that scene with all that stuff being burned.
They're quoting.
Was was carried over to other films like Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they put the thing in the way in the huge vault and everything is lost. But right, sure. But why do you think it ended in a big? Why did they burn everything? What do you guys think thematically? Did they burn everything? Have the no trespassing sign? Why was it shut off from the rest of the world? Why? Because the whole film, they were trying to tell a story, and then when they got just up to the precipice of the story, to find out what a story was about, they decided they didn't want to tell a story anymore, and they burned everything.
Because no one could figure out his story.
Yeah,
That's
and
just
like
it. No one will
he
know.
collected
No
this
one
stuff.
will ever know.
It was like a mania on his part, but he had no emotional connection to the stuff
that's
either.
kind of the whole point.
He just, as he says early in the movie, but when he's old, he says to buy things. I made all this money to buy things, but it's just sort of meaningless. Also, I think there's a great minor character who's his butler, who basically says at the end, burn all this stuff. The one who says, yes, at the very end, a great character. And so I feel like the butler is sort of saying, you know what, who needs this shit anymore? It's like his choice.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I was thinking that butler represented the entire oeuvre of Ricardo Montalban later. He probably watched that and he was like, wow, look how suave this butler is. I got to be that guy. He's like, no, sir, you do not understand. I'm Ricardo Montalban. Very, very suave.
Oh my God.
Well, great. That's it. Oh, you know what? We got, it's time for ratings. Cassie,
make it
give him a rating
personal.
to show him how we do our system.
There's no wrong answer.
I'm scared. How am I supposed to rate Citizen Kane?
5 sleds.
There you go.
Yeah, well, we do it out of 10. So, like I said, I find films like this intimidating. If I don't 100% know what's going on, I feel a little bit intimidated. Josh, you're smiling, but I do. Mm-hmm. I'm just being honest.
Well, that was for a screenshot later. I know you like to get those smiles.
Oh my God. Okay. I completely respect it. I'll probably watch it again just because I think maybe now after we've talked about it, I'll get some more out of it. But again, the general message of what's really important, what really matters, you can achieve anything you want in life, but when you're gone, all your legacy that belongs to everyone else. And like, it's up to you to make sure people remember you the way that you're meant to be remembered. Do you know what I mean? So that's something I think is really just universal, and that like we all can learn something from that. So yeah, I see it as a far more emotional movie than I think a lot of people do, because that's what I took away from it more than anything. So anyway, okay, I'm gonna stop babbling. I'll give it.
I give it 10 sleds. 10 sleds up.
10. Yes.
Excellent.
100%.
James? Great. 10 sleds up. I like it. I concede your point that the opening is a satire and very much reflective of its time, and that the audience would understand contextually, but I still maintain it was slightly too long. I could have done without all the explainers of the characters in the future, in those post-death interviews. So, but
I love that guy.
I still
that
loved
guy
it.
is
So
fucking
I'll
hilarious.
give it. We didn't talk about
too.
this character, but I will give it 9.5 frustrated opera teachers.
That is because that's a really funny character. Very good. Great. Well, very good. So it made the cut. We